I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently. After a decade of coaching individuals from corporate leaders to creative artists to multi-million-dollar CEOs, I'm convinced we are far closer than we realize to what we deeply desire, and it's a willingness to do differently that can change everything. Whether you feel stuck in survival, navigating a change, or seeking more for your life, may this be your weekly nudge to take a risk, to build a life that is uniquely bold, authentic, and in alignment with your deepest values. Do you feel like you're surviving your life or building your life? My guest today is a client of mine, and we started working together because she felt consumed by her work. She loves her work and loves her family and was struggling to juggle them both. She puts so much heart into everything she does, and it has been an honor to help her channel her incredible drive and energy into the other important areas of her life, which has actually set her business up to thrive even more. Tanya Wilson is the owner and CEO of Priority Pumping. She's the host of the Ladies Kickin Ass podcast. She's married, and they have 5 children and a very full plate. Our conversation today is so open and real, and she generously shares about how her identity was tied to her work, how she was making decisions that were based on the past and kept her stuck in really moving forward, how addressing the root of the matter has freed her up all over her life, the challenges of loving your work and upholding your marriage, goal setting, and so much more. Get comfy and join our conversation. It's an honor to introduce you to Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Welcome to Differently.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited to have this conversation, and it's really meaningful to me when a client is willing to come on the podcast and really just share your experience, because I think it's for other people, it's hard to always know what it looks like to work on your life and what that even means, right? Like in business, we know what that means to work in your business and then step out and work on your business. But we don't talk a lot about what it means to like be in your life and then work on your life. And you're such a beautiful example of that. We've worked together since April of last year. And I'm just excited to have you here. So why don't you give everybody a sense of who you are and what chapter of life this is for you, and a sense of your business and what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for all that. That was a very nice introduction. So my name is Tanya Wilson, and oh gosh, why are introductions so hard? I love to work and I love my family, and I struggle with juggling those two things. I own a septic and wastewater company located in Gilbert, Arizona. It is the only woman-owned business of that nature that I know of in Arizona. So I'm happy to head that up and lead that team. I've been in that business. I've been in this industry for about 13 years. I've had this specific business for just over 5. So super love that. I am also a wife, mama, and I have 5 kids, ranging from 6 to 14. So busy is an understatement for what we do all day long between that. And I am also a fellow podcaster. I have a podcast called Ladies Kickin Ass, and it is targeted and specifically made for women that want to literally do that, that want to kick some ass, want to enjoy their life, want to enjoy their business. It is geared towards women that work in the home service industry. I find that there's not a whole lot of support for the ladies that are in that industry. whether you're out in the field working or if you're behind the scenes, you're helping run one of those businesses. And there are a lot of women that work in them. So I want to be able to, I could never find a community like that I wanted to be a part of. So I decided to create one myself. So I really do love being able to share my knowledge with other women and cheer them on and watch them be able to build wildly successful businesses while still being, a badass mama and a wife and enjoying their own life, taking care of themselves, which I think that we forget to do so many times. So
Mhm.
it has been a pure pleasure to work with you. I can't even begin to describe how much I have grown personally working with you. And I know that I came on to start working with you because I was really struggling this last year with my marriage, with a lot of confidence in myself, taking a ton of business coursework and was doing great with that. But somewhere there was a disconnect, and you have been able to help me connect those links even as before we started this today, there was another one. So it'll
Mhm.
be great for starting the new year. So it's incredible what can happen when you work great on your business, but you have to work on yourself or one or the other will explode your entire life. So it has been a pleasure to work with you and to learn things from you. So I'm excited to dive more into what we've been working on.
Yeah. I I think what you describe as your challenge was my challenge too. And what I'm finding is just more and more the people I work with is their lives just they get into work and they love their work and they're good at their work, and then all of a sudden they find themselves kind of lopsided in their life, with their work being a place of a place where they feel really confident and they can measure success, and they know what to do there, and it often becomes an escape to um, maybe not face the other parts of our life that are really deeply important. And I remember when you and I just want to give a shout out to Mindy Jones, because you and I met at one of her amazing events. And I'm so grateful for that connection. I'm so grateful to know you. And Tanya, the way that you have taken on this work in your life and integrated so quickly. Like, I'm always amazed after our calls how quickly you integrate whatever, stood out to you in our conversation. And so you were on a big mission when you and I met. Like, I remember you saying I something like, I want to work myself out of a job, or put it in your words, but you were really on a big mission. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So that was my big goal for 2022, was to work myself out of a job. And what I mean by that is at the beginning of 22, I had two home service companies that I was running, the Priority Pumping, the septic company, and then Junkrate, a junk removal business. Both of them extremely demanding of time. The junk removal business had run into some snags at a business partner that had stolen a bunch of money. And it just, you know what? I just had a bad taste in my mouth. Starting at the beginning of the year, I was trying to juggle so many things. Um, Being a mom of all of these kids, and definitely my husband fell to the bottom of that totem pole, because he was sufficient to take care of himself. Sadly, that's what happens when you have too much on your plate. So last year, my big goal was I'm just going to work myself out of a job. I'm going to hire enough people so that I don't have to be here every day and I don't have to be working in this business. I can work on it. Well, I did successfully hire a great team of people that are now working in the business, and I can work on the business. But in doing so, I kind of lost myself in all of that too, because I was so dedicated to this business. I wasn't as present with my kids. I definitely wasn't present with my husband. He actually works in the business with me. So our entire marriage just turned into nothing but work, work, work all the time. So although albeit a great goal to be able to do that, at the end of the year, we had, it was so enlightening a conversation that we had that I slightly mentioned, I'm so sick of this junk removal business, and here's my reasons why. And you very just frankly was like, well, why don't you get rid of it? Why don't you close it down? Why don't you? I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was like, it was literally like the permission I needed to be able to say, you know what? You are not this business if you decide to close this down. You are not a failure because you decided not to continue pursuing this. But that was truly the permission I needed to be able to say, look, if I want to work on my businesses and not be in them all the time, I have to offload something because there's only so much everybody can do. And it was a beautiful decision to make that. Within 2 weeks after we had talked again, I had already closed that down and was on to the next chapter of what I wanted to work on. Had I done that earlier in the year, I think I would be even further along of working on my business instead of in it. I need a couple more little positions filled, and I feel like it would be a really great step to be able to do that. But it sometimes, it's you helped me realize through our work this year that you are not your value's not tied to your productivity. Um, I get emotional about that because I've always viewed myself that way. Like my value is tied to how well my business is doing or how much money I'm making or really what the business is doing. Because, like you said before, you can measure your value at a business because you can measure numbers. When I'm at home being a mom, sometimes sometimes your kids love you and sometimes they don't on the surface. You
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
sometimes you
100%.
can have arguments with your spouse and you're like, I'm just going back to work. At least here everybody likes me or they pretend to, you know.
Yeah.
um it was something that I truly had to tear away from of like what what value do I provide to this world that is not associated with a business or a person? Because I think on the controverse of that you can look at women that may not be outside of the home working but are inside of the home working and their whole self-worth is tied to how their kids feel about them or what their kids are wearing or how their kids are taken care of or how their husband's taken care of, and you're so much more than those things. So really diving into yourself and figuring out who you are and how you can contribute to the world. um, it's a lot of work, but it's such a rewarding way to live your life because shit happens and things fall apart, and when you are tied to something that can be taken away from you, everything that makes sense to you, you start questioning. So I think it's been super amazing for me to work with someone that has struggled like with that stuff in the past too, of this hyperachiever mentality equals great self-worth, and realizing that there's lot of wealth in just the stillness of being you.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much in what you just said, but I think a couple things. One is anytime we set out to make a big change, right? Like you wanted to work yourself out of this job, um, we have to, more importantly than take the actions to work yourself out of the job, which is, make sure your team is in place and start delegating and whatever those things are. But the more important foundational work is understanding and addressing the root of what has created that. Because if you don't address the root and the foundation, Tanya, you would have gone and probably done a lot of the right actions, but those behaviors that had you feel needed and successful in your work would have pulled you right back in. And that's what's been
Mhm.
really amazing watching you is as you address that, you then set yourself up to create more sustainable, lasting change. And that's
Mhm.
really what we're after. And when you talk about that business, that conversation, I just want listeners to know, like, you were so clear. Like when you described to me the business and what was happening, like it was just like, oh my gosh, of course this is what you would do is close the business, right? Like I could see from over here. And this is why having someone else and in looking into your life with you can be so helpful because we often don't see it ourselves. But you were already so clear, and I just helped you cut the last little tie that was there, right?
Yes, and it was so important to have that because I've said that to my husband so many times. Like I was like, even when all the crap went down with the theft and everything before, we were like, give me a year, let me try to fix this, let me try to turn around, let me try to do all this. And even talking to him, he's like, he said the same thing you said. But it was truly like this validation to me of somebody that's not emotionally invested in this, that's looking at it saying, what do you do? You know what you should do with this. Just do that. Like, oh my gosh, she doesn't think I'm a failure if I close this thing. She understands why I did this. That it was like the validation that I needed to do that. I think that's why community is so important is sometimes you need somebody from outside of your bubble to come in and shed some real light on, those things that you're so scared of that you don't really know that. But man, once you said that, I knew exactly what my fears were surrounding that and they didn't exist anymore.
Well, and speak to that piece because I think so many people can relate to this is that piece of that fear of failure, right? There was something that from the past that was kind of collapsing onto the present that had you tolerating and kind of hanging on to something longer than you needed to, right? And we can all like probably think of times in our life where we do that. And addressing that is so important because you can free yourself from that, right? So speak a little bit to what
Yeah.
that was for you.
So in 2014, I had a septic company with my ex-husband, with my kid's dad. And we had grown this business. We started in 2009 and we had grown this business. It was a beautiful business. We ended up losing the entire thing due to his drug addiction and him title loading off all of our equipment that I didn't know anything about until they decided to come and pick it all up. So I felt like I had worked my butt off to build this business, and then the rug was just ripped out from underneath me, and it was devastating on so many levels. I lost my husband, I lost my business, lost my sources of income, I lost the security I had with all of that, and I just had all of this negativity still built up. I've done so much work to try to release the anger that had built up over the years of that, but there was still this fear in the back of my head that people that knew about that happening in the past would associate me as a failure. If I quit doing this other business, you're going to be, oh, she lost another business or she did this. It wasn't even that I lost the junk removal business. It was that I made a decision that that wasn't my passion anymore and I decided to take it somewhere else. But in my head, I was factoring it in as a failure because I was quitting at something. And one of the most important things like I've ever heard that really helped me with that after we had that conversation, I was reading Jamie Kern Lima's book and she was talking about like know when to quit, you know. Um, so sometimes quitting one thing is a door opening to another opportunity somewhere else, you know. If things aren't working, things aren't going the direction that you want them to be in, so many times if you're in personal development or anything that you're invested in that, people will say, well, you don't fail unless you quit or you don't this, and they associate those two words together and they're truly not the same thing. You can choose to quit doing something and not be considered a failure. And so that's where the disconnect was for me was quitting meant failing. And that's not always the truth, because if I didn't quit doing that, I wouldn't be enjoying the things that I'm working on now with my daughter, or continuing to build our Ladies Kickin Ass community, because there was no time, and there was bleeding resources that I can now put into those other businesses that I'm truly passionate about. And it will light your soul on fire when you're not being drugged down with that fear of failure. Know the difference between quitting and failing.
Yeah, so true. And so often inside of like what I call your survival model, and just to give listeners a sense, like when inside of our coaching, we lay out your survival model, which is made up of your thinking and your beliefs and behavior patterns that literally helped you to survive at one time. But they're often, you're in your life today now as an adult operating in this old model that is perpetuating these unfulfilling results. And that's what was happening for Tanya. And I mean, it was so clear. I mean, and everyone listening, you can hear who she is and what she's about and what she's up to in her life. Like, it was so clear that you were kind of operating from a thinking standpoint inside of a really outdated model that was limiting you from like really, I mean, just going to that next level, right? Of life and business
Yeah.
and all of it. It was so beautiful to watch you break out of that and really see like nobody was seeing you as a failure except yourself. And that's what happens for all of us. It's like what we tell
Yes.
ourselves becomes the truth.
And so many times you're trying to prove someone or something wrong that's not even around anymore. That's not around you anymore. That doesn't
Right.
matter to you. That isn't in your circle. That's somewhere in your head. You were going to make someone love you, or make someone respect you, or make some whatever, call it whatever it is. I was haunting myself of previous people that aren't even in my life anymore. Like, why do I give a crap what they think? I don't. And it's truly working from that, survival model that you develop as a child, as a younger person, that you hang on to. But that's not who you are. You can choose to let your story help propel you to the next level, or it can shackle you, and you have to make that decision of which one you're going to do.
Yeah. So tell us, where did your thinking have to change when it came to you allowing yourself to move, into a more of a leadership role in your company and like not have to be there all the time and involved in every little thing? What was that? Sh- yeah, walk us through that.
I think when you hire the proper people, the right people that are supposed to be there, there is a different level of expectation from them and for you to them. I know at the beginning of 2022, I did not have the right people on the bus for sure. There were some that elected to leave themselves. There were some that we let go. Really having the team that we have right now, which is incredible. I don't feel that you feel like I got to be there all the time. I got to be there all the time, or else something's not getting done. Something's not getting done. And I think as women, we do that even within our own homes with our spouses or with our children. I got to be with them all the time, and this need to helicopter on things. It's
Yes.
truly seeing what will happen when you train people, believe in them, give them rope, let them fly.
Mm,
That was a big thing of like, I have to give this to you and I have to back away. That was a big thing of learning. You can't micromanage and you can't hovercraft people if you want them to grow and to fly. In any aspect of your life. So that was a big thing for me. I did a lot of leadership training work this past year, not only with you, with the Tony Robbins organization. I went through tons of that training. I work with a business coach with that on a weekly basis too. And just really taking one little thing at a time that I was struggling with and working on a solution for that. It's one thing at a time, build on top of brick by brick by brick, and then you look and you're like, we've built something beautiful. this year.
Mm.
And it was those little tiny things one at a time. Because if you try to, stand that whole entire brick wall up by itself, good luck. You can't withstand that. It's going to crumble, it's going to fall over, and you're not going to get anywhere. And I think really looking at the little tiny things, make a list, take one a week, work on this, work on this, work on this. At the end of the year, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh. And you even look back. I was talking to my husband about this weekend. I'm like, you look back even 5 years ago, what I enjoy and stress about today were the things I could only have wished and prayed for back then.
Wow.
So we very much uh, overestimate what we can get done in a day and underestimate what we can do in 5 years. So really taking that, because everybody has one big lofty goal that they're going to hit, you may hit that in 5 years, but it's all the little tiny pieces that you put together to get to that beautiful thing you get to enjoy later on. So really just going back to the basics. You got to go back to the basics.
Well, I love what you just said, because I was just writing about that in the we're in a new year, and people think of the big lofty things that you're going to set out and do, and that's not really where these deep, meaningful changes actually occur. They occur in the little tiny moments like you're talking about, where you choose to turn left when you always would have turned right, whether it's like in marriage or at work. You change your behavior just ever so slightly, and you do that over time. And it's these micro movements that ripple to that larger change that you desire. And I remember hearing somebody talk about like having like a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year kind of mission that you're on, and like really stretching that out. Like you were saying, just 5 years, like what can you do in 5 years? And it just gives you a lot of space to make a lot of things happen without that feeling of like urgency. And it has to be this big monumental thing.
Yeah. It's quite incredible to really sit down, and it's fun to dream those things up, do that with your spouse, do that even with your kids. Like I love to ask my kids, like, what do you want to be doing 5 years from now? Even my son is 9, he's like, I want to be working, he's already got a game plan that he's going to take over my business. So I want to go to work and I want to drive the tractors and things like that. It's just so cool for them to get their minds thinking about this, even when they're, 5, 6 years old. And just, it's so fun to be able to hear what they say and make plans with your spouse so that it's something that you're both working hard towards achieving. At the beginning of every year at my business, we just had it this last Wednesday, we have a goal setting meeting. And we have a big goal board in our hallway, and everybody has to bring at least 4 personal goals they're working on and 4 professional goals for work that they're working on. And they have to be measurable. You can't just say, I want to be better at my job. It's like, I want to sell this many installs, or I want to do this much money every month. Something that you can directly be responsible for. And it is so cool to see what everybody writes down on there. And then once a month, we just kind of go through it, allow people to pull those goals off of the board if it's something that they've achieved throughout the year. And then we celebrate them, because so many people don't have people in their corner, or they don't believe in them. And even at work, I think one of the greatest things I could do as far as leadership is concerned is be that person for them. Even if that's the only person that they have, um, that's believing in the things that they want to do. I have a driver that works for me. His name's Keith. He's incredible, incredible young man. When he came to me, I remember him saying, like, he just appreciated that I didn't yell at him. And I thought that was the strangest thing ever. I was like, why would anyone yell at you? You're so cute. You're so sweet. He was like 21 when he came to work here. I thought he was like 30. He wasn't, because he just carried himself so well. His big goal last year was to pay off his debt. And in November, he purchased his first house. And it was such a cool moment when he's like standing in front of the board and he's like, my goal this year was to pay off all my debt. And here I am going and buying a house. And I like just the pride that you feel being able to be the person that helped show him, inspired him, believed in him that he could do that is the most rewarding thing in the world. And those are the things that I love about business. I love to do those things with my kids. Like, what is your goal? Let's write it down and be able to celebrate them going through that stuff. And hopefully, just by doing that with even just the small 10 people that we have or that our families have, if you don't have a business, you can do it with your family. You're changing the way that they look at goal setting and being able to achieve things. And hopefully, they'll continue to do that with their kids or a team that they lead someday because it was so impactful for them. So, leadership can come in many different forms. And a lot of times, the best thing in the world is just having somebody believe in you and give you little tips and tricks and things like that. And that's something that has been invaluable to me working with you is you've been able to provide those things for me in truly we've worked a lot towards me looking at marriage in a better eye because I didn't, and it's been so helpful to be able to do that and have somebody that will believe in you and can help you do those things. So I know that was a whole long conversation about
Mhm.
leadership stuff, but I think it's helpful for a lot of people to think it can be something that simple that you can make a massive impact with people.
Oh, it's so good. I just love your heart. I just love your heart. Um, because I mean, that story, you can just see like what that does for your team. Like just going to work and knowing a little more about what's on people's hearts and minds and what they're dreaming of and what their goals are outside of just the day to day grind of whatever you're doing. I can only imagine that that impacts everything that they're doing throughout the day, the way they interact with each other and see each other. And I mean, it's really big.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay. So let's talk for a minute about marriage because I know I've had to travel this in my own life of just I love to work. I love to work. I've always loved to work, and I love it so much. I sometimes think I could not sleep and just work all the time. And I had to, at a point in my marriage, I realized I actually was working with a coach at the time, and he helped me to see that while I was saying I wanted to create this great marriage, my husband was literally getting the breadcrumbs of my time, if that. And I really
Mhm.
had to make some very big adjustments over the last 10 years. And those changes have reaped so many rewards. And I still love my work. I still get to work. I still get to be productive and do what I love. And I actually think that because our marriage is thriving, it just fuels everything that much more. And so I know this is like a work in progress, right? That will continue into this year. But
Mhm.
what would you say to people who struggle with this? Like what's helped you or opened your eye or helped you see something different?
Oh, it has been a lot of trial and error this year and a lot of real conversations with you. And I know that and if you are a woman that loves to work or is a leader of a company or owns a business or things like that, a lot of times you will carry quite in what your husband's eyes might be, a masculine energy that may be quite emasculating to them. Um, I know for sure that my husband has mentioned that to me more than several dozen times of, I don't like the way that you speak to me. I don't like the way that you talk to me. I for the longest time thought that of like, well, then you just don't like me because this is who I am. I have a very hard time when I'm working all the time, really switching to becoming that softer person. Um, I am not an overly, I've never been an overly affectionate person with whoever I've been dating or married to my spouse. I am huggy, lovey, kissy like crazy to my kids. I've always had a hard time with that with my significant other. I'm still exploring all of that and trying to figure that out. But it is something truly that I have to be very purposeful to make sure that I am doing that for my husband every day and not just once a day, throughout the day. Because it's not something that comes real easy to me. And I don't think I'm alone saying that. And I think other women need to hear that that's okay if that's hard for you. I think society paints women as supposed to be this nurturer and this, the one that loves the love. I have always struggled with that. Um, so I want you to know that you're not alone if you struggle with that. But what can we do to be more, if we choose to be in a relationship with someone or we choose to be married to someone, what can we do to make sure that we are providing them with that need? Because oftentimes I have found that um, there may be a person that doesn't need that as much, and there's a person that does need that more. Um, so you have to be purposeful. Uh, that's something that I have to remind myself of a lot, and my husband has to remind me of it a lot. I do really good for like 2 weeks, and then I'm like, "Oh, we're good now." So then I go back to my old ways, and in his eyes, I'm forgetting about him again. It's something as simple. I know he said this to me so many times. Like, just like give me a kiss in the morning and say good morning before you decide to pop out of bed and go run on to your, to-do list, which I do. And I know that that is such a simple thing, and I literally have to remind myself of that in the mornings if I want to be mindful of making sure I'm meeting his needs, of saying, like, I'll get out of bed and be like, "Oh, I didn't do that. Let's try this again," and make him know that I'm thinking of him first. I want to make him feel seen first thing in the morning. He's not lower on my to-do list than my big old to-do list that I have to do today. So I think intentionality with people that struggle with that may seem mundane and boring. Like sometimes I set messages in my phone like at 2 o'clock that's like I try to stagger them throughout the week so it doesn't sound like you're doing that. But like, hey, send them a text message. Like, thank you
Mhm.
so much for something that you did something that they did yesterday, or you make me feel this way, or something like that, and make them realize that it's not the mundane. Sometimes we just get so lost in our marriage with everything else that's going on that intentionality has to show up. And every time I quit doing it is when we have problems again. So that's something that I'm really focused on for this next year. Is working on the intentionality with my husband and making sure that I don't lose my marriage in this business.
It's so fascinating, like with marriage, I think I know I went into it with just a completely different idea of what it actually is. And like learning to love each other well in your marriage it takes a really strong commitment and it takes a long, I feel like we've been working on that in our marriage for a lot of years and we get better and better at it, but we miss all the time. Every day. We fail every day. We fail each other every day. We laugh about that now. We're like, we just do because we're human. But it's not
Yeah.
because there's a lack of intentionality or effort to really learn to love each other well. And when you commit to learning to love each other well, it does just get better and better. And Tanya, I just want to acknowledge you because you've been so willing to look at yourself in the marriage. And I think it's such a pitfall that we fall into of like, oh, if our husband would just change, or if he would be better, or if he would do this, then my life would be better. And I have never seen that in you. I'm sure maybe you felt it or thought it, but you were always willing to look inside of yourself. And for anybody listening who feels, resigned or frustrated because you're like, oh, you feel powerless, there's so much power you have within yourself to change your marriage or relationship without them going through coaching or doing anything. And Tanya, you just described that. Like, you start to change yourself and show up differently, and all of a sudden he would surprise you, right?
Yes. And I remember the first time you said that to me, it was a little lengthier discussion and it was like a smack in the face. I'm sure you probably remember what you said to me, but I
I
was like, what? In my head when you said that. Can I tell him what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so we were having this conversation and I was so upset with him. And I don't even remember what I was upset with him about or something. And you just point blank said to me, "You are cutting his balls off. You've chopped his balls off." And I was like, "How dare you say that to me? Like, my girlfriends would never say that to me. Like, can you?" And at that moment, I knew, like, this is someone that is gonna help me get somewhere, because that takes a lot of guts on your behalf to be able to say that to somebody. And it truly was. And I remember walking in the house, I was sitting in my car talking to you on the phone, and I know that I had just been in an argument with him before we had that conversation, so I was super heated and pissed off. So whatever I said really came off. I was being nasty to him, and I remember you saying that to me, and I walked right back in the house because I could see it, because somebody called me on my shit.
Mm.
Like, I need that. That is one of the most beneficial things in the world, of knowing that you have a good coach, is somebody that will call you on your shit and won't just like, "Oh yeah, you're right. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help you with anything. I'm trying to grow here, and I can't do that doing what I'm doing." I walked in the house, sat on the bed with him, and I literally said to him, "I just had a conversation with my coach, and she made it perfectly clear to me what I have been doing to you." And I told him about the conversation that we had had, and he was like, "What?" It's truly being able to be humble enough that if you care about your marriage, that you are willing to go right back in after you've just had that argument and say, "I sucked," or "I was wrong," or "I did this," and be able to want to fix it. So many people will defend till the death of their marriage that they're right and you're wrong. And if you would do this first, then I will do this. Somebody's got to crack. It's the chicken or the egg situation I think about all the time. Like, which one? Like, it's somebody has to do it. And instead of waiting for them to do it, you always, if you care, have the opportunity to take the first step to make it better. And then, you know what? You're gonna suck again, and then you're gonna have to do it again, and then you're gonna have to do it again. I I struggle with marriage. It is something in my heart of hearts, I have never paid super a lot of attention to, and it shows. And that's why I continue to keep struggling with it. But I'm learning tools from you. I'm learning tools to be able to be better at this. And I think it's something that nobody walks into this and they're just great at it and it's great all the time. It's not. It's not an Instagram reel. It's nothing. It can get ugly sometimes, but when two people love each other and they don't want to give up, both of them are willing to, go to each other and admit when they have been wrong and try to reconcile those things. And if you truly love each other, there's nothing that can stop that. I think there's great respect that you gain from your partner being able to do those things.
Yeah. I had heard that from some speaker at some point, that as women, that's what we do to men. We want them to be these strong figures in our lives and these leaders. And loving and all these things, but without realizing it, we're constantly taking away their power and disempowering them and telling them we don't like the way that we do this. Oh, but wait a minute, you did it wrong. We don't like the way you did it. And we redo it. And we're in essence doing that all the time, but then pissed off that they're not showing up the way we want them to. And so I've had to deal with that in my own life too, girl. And I just, the power of conversations that are just real like that, because I could just see, like, as you're describing that you moved closer together in that moment, and that's what's available,
Sure.
right? And we have to do it. It's not a once and done. We have to do it over and over and over.
And over and over and over. I think something too that I just like, this is something I'm putting into practice this year that I think could be very helpful if you are really trying to work on your marriage, or if your marriage means a lot to you, you want to make it better, even if it's great, whatever. Truly being intentional about them, for give it 15 minutes a day. If you can't find 15 minutes a day, then like delete Facebook, something, like find 15 minutes a day to write down what you're thankful for about them. Things, the way that they make you feel, the way that you feel about your marriage. Like, just focus on marriage and write those things down. I truly believe that if you are focused on the positive aspects of whether that's your business, your marriage, your kids, whatever the big problem is, and you focus on the positive things of that instead of writing pissed off in a journal about all the things that you hate and loathe about someone or some event, it's really difficult, one, to stay upset with them, two, to repeat, those things are going to come out in you all day long. When I start a morning of gratitude about my marriage or gratitude about my husband or my kids or things, when they leave something laying around, I'm not as apt to be like, pick your shit up and go like you get at the end of the day. It's more of a gentle reminder or even helping them out with some stuff. When you come from that place of love, it's very difficult to switch over to that upset and hastiness and letting words fly out of your mouth that you didn't think about first. So that's my big thing that I'm really working on to make my marriage stronger this year is starting that place of gratitude in the morning. If I say I'm thankful for my husband for all that he does, I'm going to think twice about complaining to him or bitching at him because he didn't do this today. This morning you were
Yeah.
thankful and now you're not. Like, which one is it? And it's always in a place, if you love that person, it always goes back to the place of love. So I think that's a beautiful thing too. And it's really cool to be able to look back on those things. I think it could truly be like, some great lessons for people to learn from your writings at some point, your kids and things like that. Like, my mom and dad really loved each other, or these are things that they struggled with and they weren't perfect with things, but these are things that they worked through. Sometimes it's just good for you. Even if you don't keep it somewhere, type it all out, write it all down and delete it. Makes you feel better in the morning anyways.
It's so true. What you focus on. And I mean, we hear gratitude all the time, but there's something so powerful about where it's a choice of where you're going to focus. And that choice is going to give you a certain set of results. You reminded me of when Shane, our youngest, was young, like in grade school, he would forget things everywhere. He would like lose his things and he would just forget everything at his friend's house. And it was just like a thing, right? And I remember like he left something again at like his friend's house and I had to call his mom or go pick it up or something. And I was feeling like a little bit embarrassed. And she said, Carla, she goes, he might forget his things, but he never forgets his friends. And like, that was just like, a
Oh,
perfect example of like, here I was focused on, that he forgets his things. So what? Right? Like he doesn't today, right?
yeah.
He grew out of that. He really did grow out of that. And like, what a beautiful reminder she gave me was like, hello,
Yeah.
where are you focused?
Yes.
Okay,
Where
tell
focus
us.
goes,
Oh,
energy flows. So, if you want to
that's
be
right.
negative Nancy all day long, then that's what's going to come out of you, if you focus on those things. I'm choosing
That's
not
right.
to do that. And it truly is just a choice.
It is a choice. So tell us some of the fun things that you are most excited about or proud of that you've been able to add into your life or have more time and space into your life as a result of a lot of hard work.
Ooh. Well, like you, working is my hobby. It's my number one hobby. But you know what? There's a lot of really fun things that are coming out of my hobby of wanting to work all of the time. Building this Ladies Kickin Ass community. I'm so excited for all of the stuff that I have on the calendar for this year. I'm going to an incredible mastermind in February to work even deeper on that.
Yay.
Super, super excited for that. I truly, truly believe like power of proximity. I'm really getting around. I mean, that's how I met you. Just being around people and getting to know other women in your community. I think so many of us lived online for, a couple of years and like I'm just dying to be like, let's just all get together and do a lunch or coffee or drinks or something. Like just get a bunch of cool women together and we don't have to talk about business at all. I just want to get to know these women and it truly is a beautiful thing that when you become friends with women that are achieving things and wanting to achieve things like you are, you walk into a room of opportunity because these women that love you will mention your name in a room full of opportunity all the time. So I just truly want to continue to keep building that circle of influence around myself. Also
And
with my husband
backing up,
too.
getting yourself a little more outside of your business is allowing you to focus on that, right? Which is
Yeah.
kind of a bigger heart project you have.
Huge heart project. I'm also working with my daughter. Has started a business. She is doing skincare for teens. She works with a coach out of Las Vegas that is mentoring her. Super cool. Started. We found her at a Pinterest conference and my daughter went up to her and, just, I want to start a skincare brand. And she just took her under her wing and has helped her so much. It's so cool. She has lots of great opportunities coming this year. So it gives me another place to channel my creative energy, all while helping my daughter build something that can be very impactful for her and her future. So I'm
And how
so
old is
excited.
she?
13.
That's amazing. That's so awesome.
It's so cool. During Christmas, she did a couple of pop-up shows, and one of them she did, in Awatuki. It was like a little Christmas market thing. The girl made like $3 shy of $1,000 on a Saturday, and
Wow, Tanya.
I'm like, "Jim," and it's so amazing too because my big goal with her this year is to get her out and to get her to see like providing service for people and realizing she's grown up with an entrepreneurial mama. Like she looks at that and she's like, well, that's just what we do, I'm like, that's not normal. You're 13 and you're going after this big dream. This is not normal. I want you to be able to get out and be able to influence those girls that are around you. Show them what you can do. Be proud of what you do. It's that whole teenager, I'm so scared of what other people think about me things. But that can be a great area of influence too, of being around even, my circle of lady friends and her being able to see, wow, like if I stick with this and do these things, this is the kind of atmosphere that I can, have a home for myself. And it's so important to include her in those things. Um, just there's so many exciting things coming up. I got married to my husband during COVID in 2020. And so we have not got to go on our honeymoon, which we are planning now for the first week in May. We are going to go to Spain in Paris. So we are super excited about that. He's going to take me out of the country and show me that there's a big world out there. He's very excited to do that. This little
That's
Wyoming
awesome.
girl doesn't like to travel very much. So
Well, and you've made some changes to your schedule, and I think even in summertime, right? Like you wanted to spend more time with your family, and you've done that.
yes, it's been so beautiful to have the team that I have at my business that they don't need me here all the time. I had a team that was like, "When are you coming in today?" It was almost like I answered to them all of the time of like how I was splitting my time, what I was doing, all these things. I have an incredible team of people that have been trained beautifully, that just believe in the mission and the things that we're doing, part of the business. My team members are all part of this business. I am like an open book with them about everything. And it's a beautiful thing because everyone buys into what we're trying to build here. Everyone wants to be a part of something that is being built that's something bigger than them, and they're a part of it. And it's so incredibly cool. Just even like with Christmas time, the kids are out. I got to spend so much time with them and not be stressed out about everything that was happening here. You know, I can take off for a week and the building doesn't burn down and it actually grows bigger, which is a amazing feeling.
It is so amazing to see, like, just see you talk about that because it's all such a reflection of the growth you've made too, right? Because when we started and when you started on, kind of your large mission here this year, um, you needed to also be needed in the business, right? And as you
Mhm.
transformed that, now you have a team, like you're teaching your team how to be in relationship with you now, right? Like there's this whole metamorphosis that's happened. It's so incredibly beautiful.
Yes.
Congratulations on
That's
everything. And you had a huge
thank
business
you.
year too.
Yes. You know what? And a lot of that would not have happened if I wouldn't have been able to let go. And a lot of that goes with doing that personal work of realizing my worth is not tied to who needs me. It's not. You know, I can
Yeah.
provide great support and I can do it from a distance and I don't have to be there holding people's hands. You know, I think as you grow, even as a mom, you know, these kids are getting older. I dropped my daughter off at school yesterday and I was like, oh gosh. I literally said out loud, I need to find some more friends because I've done so much and everything with her all the time. And now she's in eighth grade and she has her own group of friends and she's doing, you know, she's gone busy all the time doing things. And I'm like, it's just such a
Wait a minute.
transition that you realize, you know, like, oh my gosh, my kids still need me, but in a very different capacity of what it has been in the last little stage of our life. So
Yeah.
it's truly just been like a blossoming year of finding out who I am. And it's not based upon me being needed by everybody else. That's great, but I don't
Yeah.
have to do that. And what a weight off your shoulders too.
What a weight off your shoulders. Yes. Okay. So tell people where they can find out about all the amazing stuff you're doing.
Um, you can go to Ladies Kickin Ass on Instagram or Facebook. We have a group on there. On Instagram, in my bio, there's Tanya Wilson page that has all the links to my businesses and everything else that you might want to connect with us.
And check out her podcast, Ladies Kickin Ass, which
Oh,
is probably
yes.
linked on
There's
there
a new
too.
one that just came out today that is awesome. It's talking about setting goals around a word. Every year we come up with a word at our business
Oh,
and we actually we have the same word at our house too. So it's something that appears all the time. Last year it was consistency and we worked our butts off on that. This year our word is stronger. Thanks to my daughter. She came up with that and she said, "What about stronger?" And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly it because we built such a great foundation last year. How do we make it stronger? And so I think that's true for our business, it's true for our family life. It can transition through everything that we're working on this year. So it's an awesome kind of insight as to how we do that with goal setting.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to check that out too.
Ooh.
So, last but not least, what does differently mean to you?
Oh, I've been thinking about this one. Um, to me, it is doing things differently is willing to do what most other people aren't willing to do. And I think that's how you show up differently in the world. I think that's how you make the biggest impact. I think that's how you become most influential, because what I mean by that is the easy way is not always the best way to do things. And that tends to be the direction that people lean towards. I think really standing up for what you feel is right and being strong in your convictions of why you're doing what you do or why you want what you want is a very powerful message to send to your children, send to your teammates, send to your team if you have a business, your friends. They truly believe in something and they truly want to make a difference. They want to be different. Um, I always say to my kids all the time, there's a Dr. Seuss quote that's to be number one, you have to be odd to be number one. And
I
that
love that.
is so true in so many facets of everything because they're afraid what other people are going to say or they're going to be judged. So they're going to be thought of poorly because they don't go with what the mainstream media is with everything and what a shit show that is right now anyway. So really be strong in what you believe in. And even if you're the odd man out, you'll be the one making the difference because you're going to stand out amongst the crowd.
Differently. Beautiful. What a great conversation. So many gems, Tanya. Thank you so, so very much for joining me here and sharing your journey, your experience. I know it's going to touch other people, and it is just such an absolute honor to work with you. So from my heart, thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, be sure to hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please help us spread the word and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.